People are digging up a beach in Australia to find a ship. Isn't that just crazy? Well, imagine this. You're walking peacefully through an Australian coastal town, ready to place your order at the local McDonald's, when you stumble upon something that looks completely out of place, a massive replica of a Portuguese caravel. In Warrnambool, this surreal scene is real. Between burgers and fries, an intriguing question hangs in the air. Why, of all things, is there a Portuguese ship decorating a fast food restaurant on the other side of the world? The answer might be buried in the golden sands of Armstrong Bay, where one of the greatest mysteries in Australian maritime history waits to be uncovered. Beneath layers upon layers of sediment, it's said that an ancient 16th century Portuguese caravel, the legendary mahogany ship, rests. This isn't just another tall tale. If true, this discovery would be explosive. It would mean that Portuguese sailors reached the Australian shores 200 years before the British ever set foot on the continent. I found something weird on the beach the other day, says Maria Thompson, a 67-year-old local resident. It was pieces of old wood, unlike anything I've ever seen around here. I always wonder if it could be, well, you know. This story's presence is so strong that it's seeped into the town's DNA. Every grain of sand in Armstrong Bay seems to hold a secret. Every wave crashing on the shore seems to whisper old Portuguese stories. But the big question remains. Is there really a Portuguese caravel sleeping its centuries-long sleep beneath the Australian sands, or is it all just an elaborate legend to attract curious tourists? It all started in 1522. While the world was still trying to grasp its true size, a Portuguese fleet quietly sailed through the waters of the Indian Ocean. At the helm was Cristóvão de Mendonça, a navigator whose name probably should be in history books, but isn't. Back then, every voyage was a shot in the dark, explains maritime historian James Peterson. Portugal and Spain had divided the world between them through the Treaty of Tordesillas, but Australia, well, it was a complete mystery. What happened? Next is where the story gets even more fascinating. One of Mendonça's ships simply disappeared. Like a needle in an ocean-sized haystack, the vessel vanished into the vastness of the South Pacific. My grandfather used to say that the Portuguese not only arrived here but left a permanent mark, says Robert McPherson, a 73-year-old local fisherman. He swore he saw the shipwreck when he was young. But the real weight of this story goes far beyond a lost ship. If confirmed, this discovery would be like a bomb exploding at the foundations of Australia's colonial history. Just imagine, all that British pride of discovering Australia would crumble in an instant. It's like we have two different histories competing for the same spot in time, reflects Dr. Sarah Williams, a marine archaeologist. One official, neat, organized, and the other submerged, mysterious, waiting to surface. What's even more intriguing is that Portuguese documents from the time simply disappeared. Coincidence? Or was something darker at play? And that suspicious disappearance of documents wasn't the only mystery baffling historians. When the first English settlers arrived in the Warrnambool region in the 18th century, their eyes widened at something that shouldn't have been there, the clear remains of an old ship in Armstrong Bay. Records from the time include detailed descriptions of a structure that clearly wasn't of English origin, reveals Professor Timothy Blake, an expert in colonial maritime history. Settlers reported seeing fine timber and construction details typical of Iberian ships. Even more surprising is that these remains stayed visible for decades, defying time and tides until they simply vanished in the late 19th century. How could something so significant just disappear? Nature has its own plans, explains marine geologist Dr. Patricia O'Connor. Ocean currents and shifting dunes may have gradually buried the ship under tons of sand. It's like the sea itself wants to keep this secret. But not everyone buys such a simple explanation. Robert Kingston, a local historian and author of Buried Secrets, suggests something more sinister. There are reports of a nighttime operation on the beach in 1880. Some people say they saw men removing large pieces of wood by lantern light. Why the rush? Why at night? The lingering question is, what really happened to those remains? Was nature conspiring to hide an inconvenient truth, or did human hands interfere to preserve a specific version of history? And it's this persistent doubt that turned Warrnambool into a true hub for treasure hunters. The town, once a sleepy coastal community, found itself at the heart of an archaeological fever. The mystery of the Portuguese ship wasn't just a story anymore, it became a collective obsession. I've lost count of how many times I've woken up in the middle of the night and seen flashlights flickering on the beach, says Margaret Williams, who has lived across from Armstrong Bay for 40 years. It's like the whole town's been bitten by the curiosity bug. The local government, realizing the story's potential, started organizing official search contests. Substantial prizes were offered to anyone who found concrete evidence of the ship. The result? Over 500 holes have already been dug along the coast, each one carrying the hopes of dozens of adventurers. My dad joined 3 different expeditions, reveals Tom O'Connor, who owns a local inn. He used to say it wasn't about the prize money, but the chance to be part of history. He ended up turning our inn into a meeting spot for other relic hunters. The local McDonald's, with its replica Portuguese caravel, became more than just a fast food joint. It turned into a symbol, a constant reminder of the mystery hanging over the town. Tourists from all over the world stopped to take pictures, share theories, and maybe even plan their own search expedition. But perhaps the most fascinating thing is how this search transformed Warrnambool's identity itself. Sometimes I think, finding the ship would be almost disappointing, confesses Sarah Mitchell, a local history teacher. It's the search that keeps us together, that makes us dream. It's like every resident is a guardian of this mystery. If the search unites the town, it's the ship's very name that holds one of the most intriguing clues to this mystery. Mahogany Ship, a title that, by itself, raises eyebrows among experts in 16th century Portuguese navigation. The use of mahogany in Portuguese ships from that time was practically non-existent, explains Dr. Manuel Santos, a historical shipbuilding expert from the University of Lisbon. They preferred oak and pine. Finding mahogany would be like finding a smartphone in a medieval dig. This wood detail has kept marine archaeologists up at night. If we could find just one piece, a single fragment of worked mahogany, we could run carbon dating tests, reveals Dr. Elizabeth Chen, a maritime archaeology specialist. It would be like having the ship's fingerprint. John Harrison, a local diver who's been part of many searches, shares an intriguing experience. During a dive after a particularly strong storm, I found a piece of dark, dense wood wedged between the rocks. Before I could retrieve it, the current swept it away. I still wonder to this day. The issue of mahogany wood has become so central to the mystery that some residents keep small collections of wood pieces found on the beach. Every dark piece the sea returns could be part of the puzzle, says Mary O'Brien, curator of the town's small museum. It's like the ocean is teasing us, giving us breadcrumbs of a bigger story. And while locals collect their possible mahogany clues, academia takes a much less romantic stance on the matter. There is no concrete documentary evidence, declares Dr. James Whitaker, chief historian at the Australian Colonial History Department. And in history, we need facts, not legends. But that's where the story gets even more interesting. In Chathade, 1982, a Portuguese researcher discovered a map fragment in Lisbon showing a coastline eerily familiar. The coastline depicted is strikingly similar to the Warrnambool region, reveals Dr. Maria Almeida, an expert in ancient cartography. And the date? 1520. The silence of official records can say more than words, argues independent historian Peter O'Donnell. Portugal was in a fierce colonial race with Spain. Do you really think they'd announce the discovery of new land? In the British Naval Archives, a particularly intriguing document from 1788 mentions traces of previous European presence on the Australian coast. The document was later classified as inconclusive and filed away in a rarely accessed section. The more official history denies it, the more interesting it gets, observes Rebecca Thompson, a maritime anthropologist. It's like we're only seeing the tip of a much larger historical iceberg. And perhaps it's this very official resistance that makes the mahogany ship story even more fascinating. After all, why so much effort to discredit a simple local legend? And it's exactly this dance between official history and mystery that continues to captivate people around the world. In this digital age, where almost everything can be explained with a click, the mahogany ship remains a seductive enigma that challenges our need for immediate answers. It's fascinating how some stories have that power, reflects social psychologist Dr. Thomas Murray. In a world where everything is instant and explainable, a well-preserved mystery becomes almost therapeutic. Sarah Chen, a travel influencer, who recently visited Warrnambool, shares, "I've traveled all over the world, but there's something different here. It's not just a story about a lost ship, it's a story about how we choose to remember our past." In 2023, a podcast about the mahogany ship went viral, racking up over 2 million downloads in a week. People are hungry for mysteries that stand the test of time, explains Jake Thompson, the podcast's creator. It's not just about finding a ship, it's about questioning everything we think we know. The town of Warrnambool itself has embraced this aura of mystery as part of its identity. Sometimes not knowing is more valuable than knowing, muses Mayor Michael O'Connor. This mystery has become part of who we are, of how we see ourselves in the world. And maybe that's the real treasure the mahogany ship offers us, not the promise of a discovery, but the eternal joy of the search. And so, my friends, as the waves continue to kiss the shores of Warrnambool, the mystery of the mahogany ship remains as alive as the day the first story was told. With every low tide, every storm that stirs the bay's sands, hearts race at the thought of a discovery. The most incredible thing is that, after all these years, we still find reasons to keep searching, reflects Amanda O'Brien, a 32-year-old marine archaeologist as she examines the beach after a recent storm. Every piece of wood, every strange shape in the sand, could be that final puzzle piece. The sun sets over Armstrong Bay, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, colors that wouldn't have been unfamiliar to Portuguese sailors 500 years ago. The long shadows on the beach seem to sketch the outlines of ancient caravels in the sand. Maybe the real treasure isn't the ship itself, ponders local writer James McPherson, but how this story connects us across time, making us question, dream, imagine. In front of McDonald's, tourists still stop to photograph the caravel replica, now bathed in the golden glow of sunset. Some laugh at the idea, others look thoughtful, but all of them inevitably glance toward the bay, as if the sea could, at any moment, decide to reveal its secret. And as night falls over Warrnambool, one question echoes through the centuries. Are some stories better left partially buried, feeding our imaginations with endless possibilities? Or is there, beneath the sands of Armstrong Bay, a historical treasure waiting for the right moment to rewrite everything we thought we knew about the past? The mystery of the mahogany ship reminds us that sometimes the untold stories are the ones that make us think the most. And maybe that's the greatest treasure of all. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with that friend who loves a historical mystery, and of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next sea adventure. Oh, and click on the video showing up here on the screen, because if this story surprised you, the next one will blow your mind. Big hugs and see you in the next sea story.